I'm gonna be honest, I have absolutely zero idea on how to intro into this one, so we're just gonna jump right in. But before we continue, it's time to pay my editors. This time, we're sponsored by LDShop. Look man, I play a lot of gacha games. I know you do too. Things get pretty expensive after a while, so it's nice to be able to get a little bit of a discount here and there, because at the end of the day, every cent saved is a cent earned. And by using LDShop, you'll be saving a lot of cents. LDShop offers up to a 20% discount on all in-game items. And if you want, you could save a little bit more money, with the link down below earning you up to an additional $50 off your next order. And because I'm not one to just throw you to the wolves and have you figured out for yourself, don't worry, I actually tested out the service myself. As you can see, we're currently in Genshin, as you can tell by my ugly filters that you all love to comment on so much. Gonna go on over to LDShop, go to Genshin, get one of the 3 welcome packs. Make sure you select the right server. If you don't, there's nothing you can do for you. Put in the ID. I just copy pasted mine directly from in-game, by the way. You can add me if you want to. And then top up. Alright, and now that the transaction's completed, we're just gonna wait in-game for a little bit and get our item. Okay, there it is, as soon as I alt-tab back into the game. 1, 2, 3. As you can all see, I got my 122 items pretty much immediately, and yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So there you go. Save yourself some money, use the link in the description, really helps support the channel. That all being said, let's get back into the video. I've noticed a trend in the past couple of months. An upsetting trend that I feel like not enough people are complaining about. A trend I can apply to any one gacha game, however, its effects can be felt throughout the entire industry. That being the new annoying feature where a character will release premium 5-star, DPS or what have you, that is reliant on another character in order to function properly. The community has yet to come up with a term for these type of characters, and upon research I couldn't find one myself, so I'm just gonna dub this as luxury locking. I want you to take a minute and think to yourself, in any gacha game you currently play right now, is there a DPS character that exists that borderline requires another character in order to function properly? Go ahead, think about it for a second, run down to the comments and yell at me your answer. You know, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe while you're down there. You good? You ready? Good, cause time's up. I'm just gonna spitball a few, and you can tell me if I got it right. Fei Zhao and Robin, Skirk and Escoffier, Zani and Phoebe, Mavuika and Setlali, or Acheron and Jiaoshi. Now, we'll play another game. How many of the characters that I just named came out within the past year? Yeah, that's right, all of them. This isn't really something that's new. In a majority of gacha games, there is a team-based mechanic, because it's a very easy way for the developers to sell you more characters with significantly less effort. After all, at the end of the day, gacha developers are out to make money, and if your team comp is entirely listed upon the back of one character, it's going to cut into your revenue a tad. So in order to make up for that, we have released 4 brand spanking new character slots for you to fill in with other premium characters. And with such large teams comes the capacity for partner play, where you're going to want one specific unit to go onto the team in order to maximize your DPS. However, whereas before it felt like a majority of characters were created and they just so happened to have decent synergy, now it feels like new characters are handcrafted in order to be the fill-in slot of a specific unit. For example, we can look all the way back to early 1.0 Genshin, where the most overpowered team on release was the national team comp, which consisted of either Chongyun or my girl Sucrose, and then the rest of the team would consist of Zhangling, Jingshou, and then Bennett. These characters are wholly unique from one another. However, they just so happen to have some sort of synergy that makes them work very well together. Bennett allowing the entire team to get heals and snapshot a buff, Zhang Ling wanting a battery from Bennett in order to spam her burst, Jingshou being able to funnel energy into the rest of the team while providing Hydro off field, and then Sucrose would exist to buff Elemental Mastery and further increase damage with Viridescent Venerer, while also being a decent driver and grouper, or Chongyun would exist to freeze, shatter, and then vape the rest of the team's hits. These characters are wholly unique, but they just so happen to function very well when on a team together. I cannot say the same for more recent events. Whereas old characters were complete on launch, we're starting to see a trend where new characters are released wholly expecting you to play them with characters that have either released in the past or have yet to release in the future, and unless you have these specific units on the team, you will not see the apex of their calculations. Now, a lot of people would like to say that in Genshin, the first major time we saw an incident like this was Mavuika with Sitlali. However, I would very much disagree. The first major incident involving this was definitely Nuvolet and Farina, which is a very interesting statement because a lot of people said before Farina released that Nuvolet wouldn't want her on the team. Oh, how well that aged. Farina wants massive health fluctuations in order to fully stack her buff. At the time of release and to this current day, the only character that can achieve these results quickly and efficiently without the help of some other healer on the team is Nuvolet. They are very clearly made to function well together. If you do not have Farina on the team, you will see a pretty significant damage loss. However, it is nowhere near as bad as some of the later characters, for example, Kanich, who on release straight up did not have a functioning kit. You see, Kanich wants to be played with another Natlan character, and he wants to be played with other Pyro characters, and on release, that just didn't exist. The only viable options were fully dedicating Kanich to some sort of team with either a Dea or maybe a Zhangling to apply Pyro, a Bennett for a buff, and some sort of character with Deepwood. I like to use Zhongli. It wasn't until months and months later with the release of Mavuika where we saw this exact character archetype be fulfilled, and as a result, Kanich saw a massive damage spike. The same thing did happen with Mulanni too. But going back to Mavuika, she is not alone in this case. Everybody knows the infamous banner occurrence where Mavuika, the best DPS in the game and one of the best supports in the game, rolled at the same time as her best in slot support that increases her base kit functionality by such a significant margin that some people would recommend you not even pull Mavuika unless you have Sitlali first. But then, of course, we have the absolute apex of this situation where Skirt has released and she loses roughly 40,000 DPS if you do not have a Escoffier on the team, and Farina too, but mostly Escoffier. That is such an insane level of difference that we have not seen in any other game, except no, we actually have. As you all know, I am down to dog wash on Honkai Star Rail any day of the week, and it seems that a majority of people are finally agreeing as a significant portion of the YouTubers have quit playing the game, so hey, maybe this time I won't get harassed for stating my opinion, but Star Rail is no better. Matter of fact, they've been doing the same thing for a much longer period of time with the release of the lovely Fei Zhao, who if you did not have Robin, she was basically not worth pulling. All of Fei Zhao's damage comes from what I like to refer to as death by 1,000 cuts gameplay, where she will swing her axe rapidly upon X amount of hits and then deal one big burst once you've reached the threshold. Robin is a character that action forwards the entire team, supplies attack bonuses, and, of course, she gains energy when you follow up attack. And because Fei Zhao is a follow-up attack spammer, they are an ideal match together. But maybe you would say that's an unfair argument, because Robin is more of a generalist buffer. Okay, well then there's Acheron and Jiaoshi. While Jiaoshi is a generalist in the sense he is a good flex spot on mostly any team, there comes the problem that he was very obviously made to buff Acheron. You see, Acheron's issue is she is a character that wants to launch her burst in order to get high amounts of damage. In order to launch her burst, she needs to get specific effects off on enemies. Jiaoshi is a character that can apply these debuff effects in mass numbers. By applying a debuff on his skill, as well as his ultimate, as well as every single time an enemy takes action after he used his ultimate, it is wholly predictable for Acheron to get multiple bursts off in one rotation, whereas without Jiaoshi, you would be getting roughly half of that. A little more, a little less, depending on the team comp. And because so much of Acheron's damage is locked behind her burst, you could imagine what a massive increase this is. I will give Star Rail credit where it is due, however. In recent years, they have been releasing more generalist buffers instead of specialist buffers with characters like Hyacine and Sunday and Tribby, who make up what I like to refer to as the wheelchair comp, because any crippled DPS can full clear the MOC if they have the wheelchair. But hold on, Kurobots, who somehow stumbled upon this video, I am not only here to dog stomp on Hoyo games. You're gonna get your turn too, because we now have this problem in Wuthering Waves. With the release of Zani and Phoebe, we are seeing a very concerning trend where a character wants her weapon, a teammate, and her teammate's weapon in order to reach the highest potential DPS threshold, which is normal. However, the difference between these characters and their SIGs is so universally vast that the developers for all of the tier list have to put two separate calculations, one without Phoebe and one with Phoebe. And just so you know, the difference between between the two is roughly 46%. That's not personal damage, that is team comp damage. Which, in theory, I'd be fine with if the character didn't literally immediately get power crept in the very next patch. Way to go, guys. Now, some people out there would say this is an overblown problem. I have seen the take floated around by a couple of people saying that who cares? No shit, the 5-star sub DPS is better than the 4-star options. Obviously, if you get a 5-star support, they will outperform everything else. But to that I say, 1, that avoids the core issue, and 2, I'll just play ball. The problem here is not that these characters have a limited time 5-star and or premium option that buffs them significantly. That is not an issue. The problem is, these characters are designed to be buffed by one specific archetype and have absolutely no other alternative, because the developers know that meta sells, and if they kneecap a character's potential, you as the consumer have 2 options. 1, deal with it, not ideal, we're gamblers is what it is, and 2, just get the fucking character. Players should not feel like they are forced to pull multiple $200+ characters just so that they can get the full usage out of one of them. All it does is incite FOMO in players, expecting them to spend even more money so that they don't feel like they wasted their potential. There's a term for this. It's called the sunk cost fallacy, and the developers are hoping you fall for it and pull their slot. But here's the real kicker. When these characters are created, they are gutting the longevity of the unit, because 9 times out of 10, when one of these specialized support characters are released, they are intended to be played with a specific DPS character. Once that DPS character falls out of the meta, the support in question also falls out of the meta unless another character is baked with that same kit in order to sell themselves. And this is actually pretty common, because for the game developer, it's very intuitive for them to create a new character that functions well with an old character, because that by proxy sells the new character and the old character. And because the profit incentive is the only real goal at the end of the day, you're not really going to see 4-star alternatives, because why would the devs do that? Then you wouldn't feel like you have to pull the character. And if you're gonna try and sit here and tell me that's not the case, I would like to once again point back to Star Rail. On Linksha's initial debut, a majority of the community decided they were not going to pull her, because the difference between Linksha and Gallagher wasn't really that big. And because Gallagher was a viable 4-star alternative that filled the same role, Linksha had some of the lowest banner sales in the game's history. The devs see this and extrapolate it to the rest of their game. Why make a 4-star alternative? Well, you don't, because it makes you lose money. And now we sit in this awesome situation we currently have, where all future characters are going to want their delegated 5-star premium support. How fun. But with that all being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you like the video, like. If you dislike it, dislike it. And if you really like me, go ahead and subscribe. See you all in the next video. Stay safe and peace.